Today, we are really going to dig into an idea that I think is changing everything about political influence.
It really is.
We're going to look at where power actually lies in the 21st century. And, forget the smoky backrooms, the marble halls of Washington, D.C.
That's the old models.
Exactly. We're talking about your personal, hyper-curated digital world, your feed.
It's a complete shift in strategy.
Yeah.
For decades, lobbying was all about scarcity.
Scarcity of what?
Scarcity of access, scarcity of information, and the very scarce ability to influence a specific lawmaker behind closed doors.
Yeah.
Now, the whole battleground has moved into the realm of abundance. There's an abundance of content, an abundance of communities, and most importantly, an abundance of what look like trusted relationships.
Right. And that's our deep dive today. We're looking into the world of the lobbyist next door. It's all about how these, traditional, very well-funded political interests have started hiring people who look absolutely nothing like a K-Street lobbyist. So what does a reality TV star, an Olympic athlete, and a doula have in common?
It sounds like the start of a joke.
It does, but they're all increasingly being paid, and often by these very specialized ad tech startups, not to sell you a product, but to push these deeply embedded political ideologies.
And it's all disguised as, authentic personal recommendations or their own lived experience.
So our mission today is to really uncover that entire ecosystem. We're going to start with the old guard, the classic revolving door that moves government insiders into these lucrative private roles.
Then we'll look at the rise of what's called corporate grassroots mobilization, which, that really perfected the art of manufacturing public opinion.
And finally, we'll get to the heart of it. The stunning effectiveness of digital micro-influencers, and look at how this new breed of influence is just challenging every single traditional regulatory framework we have.
It's a big topic.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start at the beginning with the foundation of the old system. Section 1, expertise, access, and the revolving door.
Right, the revolving door. It's this practice that happens all the time where you see individuals moving between government service, so legislative or executive branch, and the private sector.
Specifically into these high-paying lobbying jobs.
Exactly. They're there to cash in on their government experience. It's so well established that corporations pretty much see it as a necessary expense.
And the story that really captures the public's imagination, what some sources call the pernicious telling, is this idea that government employees are actively shaping policy while in office.
To specifically benefit their future private sector employers.
So they're basically investing in their future lobbying career.
Yes. They're accumulating valuable contacts, shaping a regulatory landscape that their future clients will pay them a fortune to navigate later on.
And that tension, that's the whole debate, right? The tension between public duty and private gain.
It's central to everything.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that research helps us move past just the fear and actually pinpoint who is most likely to make this pivot.
So it's predictable. It's highly predictable. The decision to leave government and become a lobbyist really comes down to three key factors that show you where corporations see the most value.
Okay, so what's factor one? I'm guessing it's the most practical one.
It is. It's policy expertise and experience.
Just knowing your stuff.
Exactly. This is about deep technical knowledge. Individuals who have, extensive technical expertise and years of experience are statistically the most likely to revolve.
Because corporations need people who don't just know what the regulation says.
Right, but how the agency interprets it, who is in charge of enforcement, and how to challenge or comply with these really complex regulatory environments, that niche knowledge is incredibly valuable.
And factor two gets at what everyone assumes lobbying is all about. Access, proximity to power.
This might be the most critical piece. The analysis consistently shows that those who served higher up in the administrative hierarchy, so ex-political appointees, former employees at the executive office of the president, the EOP.
They're the ones most likely to land these lobbying jobs after they leave.
By a long shot. Let's just clarify what the EOP is, because that might sound like a generic government office to some people.
The EOP is really the nerve center of the executive branch. It includes places like the Office of Management and Budget, the National Security Council staff, the White House Policy Councils.
These are the people literally closest to the president.
Literally. They're shaping the administration's agenda, writing crucial executive orders, setting funding priorities. Proximity to agency leadership is the ultimate commodity. The closer you were to the person making the final call.
The more your contact book is worth.
And your insights. it becomes invaluable.
And the stats on this really drive the point home, don't they?
They're pretty striking. Just moving from a non-professional to a professional position in government is linked with a nearly five-fold increase in the probability of eventually lobbying.
Wow, fivefold.
Yeah, it jumps from 3.8% to 15.3%. The government is essentially training and vetting its future private sector negotiators.
And what about those EOP employees you mentioned?
Well, those highly connected EOP employees lobby at a rate of 9.6%.
Yeah.
For everyone else exiting government, it's only 3.0%.
So it creates this clear incentive. The higher you climb inside that inner circle, the more your financial future is guaranteed on the outside.
That's the structure. It's baked into the system.
Okay, what about the third factor? The policymaking environment of the agency. The research here sounds a bit more mixed.
It is a little more inconsistent, but generally, the suggestion is that greater regulatory activity during an individual's time in government increases the likelihood of them turning over.
Okay, so if things are busy, you're more likely to leave. Why?
Well, think about a period where a specific industry, say tech or pharma, is facing a wave of new legislation.
A lot of new rules to figure out.
A lot of new complex and potentially very costly rules. So the demand for former insiders who can interpret and navigate all that complexity just surges. It's a risk mitigation strategy for these companies.
And it's really important to remember this isn't just an American thing, right? This revolving door is a global phenomenon.
It absolutely is. And it often has these institutional wrinkles that are specific to that country's political culture. Look at the European Union, for example.
The EU context must be complicated, with so many different institutions.
It's very interesting. You've got the European Commission, the Parliament, the Council of the EU, all with different rules.
Yeah.
And the culture there is often criticized for being highly permissive when it comes to the revolving door. The rules exist, but they're not always enforced consistently.
So they have things like cooling off periods. What are those designed to do?
The idea is simple. The standard cooling off period is usually 2 years for commission officials, maybe 3 years for former president. It's meant to prevent the immediate trading of sensitive information or connections while their policy area is still active.
But those rules have limits. I remember the huge controversy with the former commission president, Jose Manuel Barroso.
Oh, absolutely. When he joined the investment bank Goldman Sachs in 2016, that caused a massive global uproar.
Even though he waited out his cooling off period?
He did. But the optics were just devastating. The outrage wasn't just about the move itself. It was the kind of firm he joined, a financial institution that was so heavily criticized for its role in the 2008 financial crisis.
So critics said he was selling his knowledge of the commission's internal workings.
To an organization whose interests were often seen as completely opposed to the public good, it was a perfect storm of bad PR.
Has there been any pushback since then? Any institutional changes?
Yes, there has. The European Parliament, for instance, has shown it's willing to use its power to block appointments if things are too close to this revolving door.
Like with that Irish central banker.
Jerry Cross, exactly.
Yeah.
They famously refused to approve him for the executive director role at the European Banking Authority because of his extensive history in financial lobbying. So it shows a growing determination to treat this as a real ethical crisis.
Okay, let's pivot now to Japan, which is a fascinating counterpoint. Their practice isn't just a loophole, it's an institutionalized cultural phenomenon called amakudari.
Amakugari. It literally translates as descent from heaven.
A pretty evocative name.
It is. And it describes the practice of senior bureaucrats retiring to these high-profile positions in the private sector. Often in firms or industries, they spent their entire careers regulating.
And unlike in the US or EU, where it's seen as this corrosive thing, in Japan, it's historically been seen as, what, a good thing.
Almost a natural, even desirable end to a long career in public service.
So the fear isn't just about trading secrets. It's about, what, institutionalized collusion.
That's the heart of the criticism. The former official keeps their close ties to their old colleagues still in the government agency. They use that relationship to help their new company get government contracts, avoid tough regulatory inspections, or just smooth over compliance issues.
So it binds the private sector to the public bureaucracy.
In a way that critics argue just stinks innovation and prevents real economic reform.
And there's research that's actually quantified the negative impact of this.
There is. A major study from 2001, which focused on the financial sector, found that banks with amakudari employees on their boards actually behaved less prudently.
Less prudently, so riskier.
Statistically riskier.
Yeah.
It seems the implicit safety net from their government connections encouraged more risky behavior. And when it comes to government contracts, companies with these ties often win projects without any bidding process at all.
How often?
About 70% of the time, based on 2005 data, which suggests the main reason for hiring these former officials isn't about their expertise, it's about getting protected access to public money.
Let's bring it back to the U.S. then. We see specific hotspots for this, right? Particularly in finance. The SEC seems to be a prime example.
It is. The financial sector is under constant, incredibly complex regulatory scrutiny. The cost of a bad regulatory decision can be, well, staggering. So access to SEC expertise is extremely valuable.
And you see a predictable flow of people from the SEC to the firms they were just regulating.
A very predictable flow. Former SEC commissioners, high-level employees, moving straight into firms like Citadel Securities or JP Morgan Chase.
Give us a sense of the scale of this. What kind of roles are they taking?
Look at a firm like Citadel. They've made a real effort to hire former SEC staff for top-level compliance roles, positions like general counsel, chief legal officer, chief compliance officer.
So they're hiring the people who know where the bodies are buried.
And they know what the agency prioritizes, how to structure complex trading systems to stay compliant, or at least stay one step ahead. It really underscores the value of insider knowledge where billions of dollars are on the line.
Okay, so that establishes the traditional power play. The insider with the connections, trading on expertise and access behind closed doors. Now, Section 2 is where the script flips. Corporations realize that a private meeting isn't enough. They need to mobilize the public.
This is the critical transition point. Lobbying isn't just that inside game anymore, the meetings, the memos, the Perry-side contributions.
It's about recognizing you need political leverage.
You do. And the outside strategy, or grassroots lobbying, is the strategic mobilization of external stakeholders, the public, employees, customers, to create that political pressure and influence what happens in the legislature.
And let's be very clear, we are not talking about genuine, spontaneous public outcry here.
No, we are talking about manufactured public sentiment, sometimes called astroturfing.
Right. So corporations hire these specialized PR firms that use technology, mass emails, social media ads, automated call centers to generate what looks like a groundswell of support or opposition to a bill.
It's the complete outsourcing of political pressure.
Right.
And if you look at the profile of a company that does this, the data is very clear. These aren't small players.
These are large, well-resourced organizations.
Exceptionally well-resourced, usually in industries that are already subject to broad government regulation.
Yeah.
And, they need a big stick to wave.
So who is the typical client? Does the size of the company really correlate with using grassroots mobilization?
It correlates very highly. The data shows that the largest group of clients using these professional grassroots firms, about 31.4% of them, have annual revenues between $1 and $10 billion.
$1 billion to $10 billion. So this is firmly in the domain of massive corporations.
They're leveraging their money to deploy firms that can create these really sophisticated political campaigns that look like they're coming from ordinary citizens.
What's fascinating to me is which issues seem to require this kind of outside pressure. It's not just a blanket strategy.
No, that's right. Corporate lobbying, when you add this grassroots component, is significantly tied to certain public-facing issues where public sentiment can really sway legislators.
Like what?
For example, the likelihood of a firm using grassroots lobbying goes up substantially if they're in the information or communication industries, about a 68.2% increase.
Because they're already in the public eye.
Exactly. And the increase for the arts, recreation, and entertainment sector is just, it's off the charts.
I saw that number. It's absolutely massive.
A 379% increase. Just think about it. These industries, media, entertainment, telecom, they already depend on public attention. So what they're trying to do is expand the scope of conflict.
Meaning take the debate out of the quiet hearing rooms?
And put it right into the public square to generate pressure on lawmakers from their own constituents. They win when the public feels like they have a stake in the game.
And on the flip side, if your industry benefits from staying under the radar, you avoid this strategy.
Completely. Industries that benefit from a low public profile, like defense, are much less likely to do this. There's a 43% decrease. If the issue is some highly specialized regulation or a defense contract that only affects a few firms, the last thing they want is to drag the public into it and invite unwanted scrutiny.
The power of putting a human face on these issues is perfectly illustrated by that case study of the tobacco industry fighting California's smoke-free workplace bill, AB 13. This was really the moment the outside strategy became critical, wasn't it?
Oh, as a textbook example, you had sophisticated, well-resourced inside lobbying meeting this organized, authentic outside counter strategy.
So Philip Morris was using an aggressive inside game.
Incredibly aggressive, just pouring money into campaign contributions. State senators who voted with the tobacco position got, on average, almost $10,000. Those who voted against them got basically nothing.
And that insider tactic was working at first.
It was highly effective at influencing policy without drawing a lot of public attention.
So they were winning the legislative fight. But the health interest groups, the American Heart Association, the Lung Association, they knew they couldn't match that money.
So they took the fight public. They pivoted brilliantly to the outside strategy.
And instead of just focusing on abstract data about lung disease,
They mobilized individual, relatable people. Bartenders, waitresses, club owners who actually supported the ban. These were the people on the front lines, breathing the smoke every single night.
so they countered the industry's narrative about economic harm and freedom with this powerful emotional story about workplace health.
And that was the game changer. By mobilizing those people, they succeeded in putting a human face on the issue. They provided these authentic, relatable figures whose jobs are literally on the line, showing that the ban was supported by the very people the industry claimed it would hurt.
So the public health groups won that fight.
They did. They proved that authenticity and genuine public pressure can, sometimes, overpower insider money.
That's a perfect transition into Section 3, which is really the whole premise of this deep dive, the new face of influence microlobbying and digital authenticity. Because if traditional grassroots used firms to mobilize employees, modern lobbying uses the authentic, trusted voice of the micro-influencer to mobilize opinion right in your feed.
This is the next evolution of the outside game. It's the transition from, hiring a PR firm to manage a list to hiring a micro-influencer who already has the audience's trust.
The goal is the same influence, but the delivery is stealthier.
And highly personalized and exponentially cheaper.
So let's define who we're talking about here. Not a celebrity with tens of millions of followers. We're focused on micro-influencers.
A micro-influencer typically has a following between, say, 1,000 and 100,000 people. Their content is super focused on a niche area, specialty coffee, a specific parenting philosophy, sustainable home building.
Or the expert in their little corner of the internet.
Exactly. And the value proposition compared to a macro influencer is just staggering, especially when you think about it in terms of political messaging.
The cost difference is the first thing that jumps out.
It's huge. Macro influencers can demand $5,000 or more for a single post. You're dealing with agents, contracts. Micro-influencers are dramatically less, maybe $100 to $500 per post.
Which means an organization can diversify.
They can collaborate with hundreds of small, focused voices instead of one giant, expensive one whose followers might be too broad to matter on a specific political issue.
But the real value isn't just the low cost, is it? It's the engagement and credibility.
That's the magic ingredient. It's trust. And that trust is built on authenticity and this psychological idea of homophily. We trust people who seem like us, who share our niche interests.
So they feel like peers, not paid advertisers.
They do. They offer highly personalized engagement. They interact directly with their followers. And this perceived authenticity translates directly into influence.
What does the data say about that?
The data is pretty clear. Studies show a massive 92% of consumers find influencer recommendations more credible than traditional ads. Their followers develop what are called parasocial relationships. That's kind of one-sided intimacy and trust. And that fosters engagement rates that are often 10 times higher than what mega influencers get.
And if they can convert product sales with that kind of efficiency, I mean, that's a terrifyingly effective proxy for how well they can sway political opinion.
If you can sell a product, you can sell an ideology. The return on investment for businesses is substantial. They could earn up to $18 for every dollar spent on micro-influencers. The average is around $5.78.
That kind of cost-effectiveness and high conversion rate makes them perfect for subtly peddling political points. You're buying trust at scale.
That's exactly what it is.
So let's make this concrete. We opened with the doula and the Olympic athlete. How does this actually translate into advocacy?
Okay, think about the doula. She's a trusted guide for new mothers. She starts promoting a specific set of regulatory changes for women's health inside her private parenting group.
So it's not a political ad.
No, it's a post wrapped in emotional language about natural birth or patient choice. The paid ideology might be advancing the deregulation of alternative medicine or lobbying against mandatory insurance coverage, but it's all framed as natural health advocacy.
And because it comes from a trusted figure in that niche, this skepticism just vanishes.
It does. Or take the Olympic athlete. He's focused on fitness and sustainability. He subtly starts promoting a controversial energy policy, say, advocating for a specific pipeline or tax breaks for a certain fuel.
But it's all framed as being about economic stability or securing sustainable resources.
It's advocacy cloaked in lived experience and fitness goals. The message is integrated seamlessly into their authentic brand. And that is so much more effective than an old Pambea ad that everyone immediately recognizes as biased.
And we've seen the strategy work in the commercial world, which is why political interests have adopted it.
Absolutely. Take the brand Glossier.
Yeah.
Their whole strategy was built on encouraging real customers, the ultimate micro-influencers, to share user-generated content. It made it feel like a peer recommendation, not top-down advertising.
Or in the business-to-business world, the project management tool Notion.
Right. They engaged micro-influencers on LinkedIn and Twitter who were already respected industry leaders. They didn't just pay for promotion, they paid for validation from voices that tech-savvy people already trusted.
So the big takeaway for political influence is clear. The most effective way to lobby the public is to have the message delivered by the person you already trust, appearing seamlessly in the community where you get your authentic information.
It's designed to bypass all traditional media skepticism and formal disclosure systems.
Which brings us to a huge problem in Section 4, the digital ecosystem and the challenge of governance. If the lobbyist is decentralized and invisible, the regulatory framework has to deal with an internet that is itself decentralizing.
And that creates a massive accountability gap. That's the core problem. We're moving into the era of Web3, which is largely built on blockchain architecture.
And the philosophy behind that is to decentralize the internet, right? To shift power away from the big tech giants like Meta and Google.
And shift it toward the user. Advocates frame this as a huge win for individual liberty. It promises more anonymity, more freedom from surveillance or censorship, since data ownership is dispersed and user-controlled.
But that promise comes with a paradox for governance.
A profound and almost unavoidable paradox. The very thing that makes it great for users, the dispersion of information, the anonymity, makes it incredibly difficult for governments to track bad actors, enforce responsible behavior, or mitigate these digital influence campaigns.
So decentralization becomes a governance headache because there's no central company to subpoena.
Exactly. There's no single authority to hold accountable. Malign actors, foreign governments, extremists could leverage this permissionless environment to prey on marginalized groups, erode confidence in democracy with targeted propaganda.
And do it all while evading detection because content moderation just doesn't work as well in a decentralized structure.
The influence is both hyper-specific and untraceable.
And at the same time, we're also dealing with the rising fear of AI-generated deepfakes and mass disinformation. But there's a skeptical counterargument that suggests these fears might be overblown.
This counterpoint is so important. It's grounded in behavioral economics. The big fear is that AI increases the quantity and quality of misinformation.
Right.
But the research suggests that the consumption of misinformation is primarily limited by demand, not by supply.
What does that mean in practical terms?
It means misinformation is already incredibly cheap and abundant. The cost of creating a plausible but false story or a manipulated image is already near zero. Generative AI doesn't have a lot of room to operate when the barrier to entry is already on the floor.
So even if an AI-generated deepfake is perfect, most people just won't be exposed to it because they stay in their mainstream content bubble.
Exactly. Most people overwhelmingly get their content from a relatively short list of mainstream reliable sources. Any increase in the quality of misleading content would be largely invisible to the majority of the public.
And there's a limit to personalization, too.
There is.
Right.
This affects the micro-lobbying we discussed. AI makes the personalized message cheap to create, but the infrastructure for micro-targeting, the actual cost of finding and reaching those niche groups, is still the bottleneck.
And even when it works, it doesn't always persuade people.
Right. Evidence suggests it often has limited persuasive effects because people just don't pay close attention to every piece of targeted digital communication they get. You can lead a horse to water.
But you can't guarantee it believes your ideological position.
Exactly.
So the most sophisticated lobbying still relies on systems where trust is already built in, which brings us right back to the micro-influencers. We actually saw a real-world example of this decentralization creating an ethical paradox during the COVID-19 pandemic with the contact tracing apps.
That is a perfect illustration of how technology ends up dictating policy. When governments wanted to create these apps, there was a huge global debate over centralized versus decentralized data storage.
And the centralized apps raised huge privacy fears, right? Fears of state surveillance, mission creep.
Huge fears that the tech would be used for policing or tracking political dissenters. So the decentralized models, where data only existed on a user's phone, were seen as the privacy protective route.
But here's the irony. Many governments, including in the UK, ended up converting to the decentralized model, not just for philosophical reasons.
But because of the technical requirements dictated by the two dominant mobile operating systems, Apple and Google, for the apps to work reliably, especially with battery life, they had to conform to the specifications set by these two corporate gatekeepers.
So, in a wild twist, this technical decision forced governments' hands. And it raises this massive question about whether it's appropriate to let two global tech giants dictate the technical and ethical requirements for state public health infrastructure.
It completely reframed the conversation. Governments were effectively forced to outsource public trust and the technical architecture of critical health systems to two centralized, highly profitable corporations with their own complex histories around data mining. Decentralization, paradoxically, strengthened the hand of two powerful centralized tech giants.
This brings us to the final huge challenge in Section 5, the transparency gap. If lobbying is now decentralized, personalized, and driven by tech giants, how on earth do we regulate it?
Well, measuring the impact of advocacy is notoriously difficult to begin with. Political impact is often described as nonlinear and combinational.
Meaning it reflects the efforts of many different actors all working at the same time.
Lawmakers, journalists, academics, and yes, lobbyists. Legislative success is rarely because of one firm or one campaign.
It's like trying to credit a beautiful symphony to a single violinist.
That's a great analogy. It's so important to differentiate between a firm's contribution, what they did, and the ultimate attribution of success. Who gets the credit? The final outcome usually results from a mix of shifting political factors and external events far beyond the lobbyist's control.
So given that complexity, what are organizations like the Open Government Partnership pushing for? What are the bedrock reforms they recommend?
The foundational reforms are all about creating a robust legal framework that requires mandatory disclosure and reporting of lobbying info, who you met, when, and what you talked about.
And crucially, having an independent oversight body.
A well-resourced and independent one, yes. A body that can manage the lobbying register, review conflicts of interest, and actually investigate violations. Without an empowered enforcer, the rules are basically meaningless.
But to catch the kind of digital influence we've been talking about, the doula, the athlete, we need to go beyond those basics. What are the more advanced reforms being proposed?
The advanced reforms are designed to close those digital and ethical loopholes. One key idea is double-entry reporting,
which requires filing from both sides.
Both the lobbyist and the parties being lobbied. So if a lobbyist says they met with Senator Smith, Senator Smith's office also has to report that meeting. It allows the oversight body to cross-verify everything and spot omissions.
That seems like such an essential check on the system.
It is. Another is creating a comprehensive, freely accessible, unified register with clear information on all lobbyists, their targets, and policy areas. Places like France, Ireland, and Madrid are pioneering these systems to make influence tracking easy for any citizen.
I thought the idea of footprint documents was particularly compelling for tackling that attribution problem.
Footprint documents aim to solve that exact problem. The idea is to assemble all the activities of a lobbying organization, their corporate funding, their legislative advocacy, their political finance activity across all jurisdictions, into a single public document.
So you see the full scope of influence.
Even if that influence is being exerted through a whole network of decentralized channels, like micro-influencers.
And finally, we're seeing governments start to adapt their transparency rules specifically for this new digital grassroots world.
We are, and Canada is a really notable example here. They're leading the charge. Their lobbying disclosure rules now specifically mandate that lobbyists disclose any communications meant to influence public officials, and that includes grassroots communication, like social media.
So this directly targets the micro-lobbyist phenomenon.
It does. It requires them to publish monthly reports detailing their objectives and the policies they're targeting. If you're getting paid to push a policy on your Instagram feed to influence a lawmaker in Canada, you have to register that.
That Canadian example is the perfect way to wrap this up. It shows the future of regulation has to catch up to the reality of influence, or the whole system just gets corrupted by these hidden narratives.
Absolutely. The age of the invisible influencer, the doula, the fitness expert, the real housewife is here. They are the new, cost-effective, highly trusted channels for sophisticated, well-funded ideological campaigns. And they're operating in that gray space between product endorsement and political advocacy.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I think the key lesson is that lobbying is no longer confined to Washington power brokers. It is decentralized, it is digitized, it's highly targeted, and it depends entirely on the authenticity of seemingly neutral, trusted voices delivering political messages right into your specialized communities.
And the profound challenge for accountability is this. Our traditional systems are built to track two things: money, through PACs and contributions, and access, through the revolving door in meetings. But how can a democracy regulate this when the lobbyist is the person you already trust in your niche community, operating outside formal disclosure rules and driven by digital platforms that are themselves challenging centralized government oversight? This transformation requires far more than just stricter regulation in D.C. It fundamentally requires a new type of digital literacy for every single citizen. You need to question not just the source of the information, but the trust that's built into the delivery mechanism itself, and ask whether that trust is being bought and sold by the lobbyist next door.